Hello everybody and welcome to this video on credit rating agencies and the ratings that they produce, that is credit ratings. It's going to be a relatively short one, very theoretical, no formulas or computations involved in this one. So as many of you will know and will be aware, there are three sort of main agencies out there in the world who produce credit ratings. Those are Moody's. Well, they do have longer names, but everybody calls, Moody's just Moody's. Standard and Poor's, that's S&P, and there's also Fitch Ratings, who we simply refer to as Fitch normally. Now, following the 2008 financial crisis, when the ratings as provided by these agencies sometimes proved to be quite misguided, some countries did go ahead and establish their own sort of own independent agencies as well. Your book talks a little about them, however, it's not a big sort of component. Don't worry about learning these things at all. So what these agencies are supposed to do is they provide independent, although being independent is not easy, an independent assessment of issuer credit risk. So we're talking about the situation when somebody issues debt securities, and these agencies need to or are asked to provide an assessment. The assessment is supposed to be forward-looking, so of course it's based to a large extent on financial information, especially financial reports, which shows us how the situation, what the condition of the firm's finances is, what's its financial position, what is its profitability. However, in the past, on a certain date. However, from that they're supposed to formulate forward-looking forecasts, and this analysis contains both elements of a quantitative nature as well as qualitative. So it's not just quantitative, it's not just number crunching, it's also an assessment of a qualitative nature. Qualitative. Okay, sorry about that. I always get confused with the number of T's in letters, in words like this, especially when I'm talking. Now, the truth is that most issuers of bonds are rated by at least two agencies. So very often by all three of the big ones, but it's typically that you get more than one agency to rate you. Mind you, this is paid for by the issuers themselves, hence it's not easy to sort of always retain that independence. And the rating itself, I guess this is an important point, the rating itself is a symbol-based measure of the probability of default, POD, probability of default, how likely it is that somebody will get into trouble and will get into default. It's symbol based because we typically use a combination of letters, sometimes numbers, pluses, minuses, and so on. Right. We're sometimes not so much as analysts interested in the rating itself, its absolute value, but as analysts we are often interested in potential changes to credit ratings, interested in changes to credit ratings. Those changes may be reflective of market conditions. The situation changing in the environment of the company, which will have an impact on the condition of the company itself as well, or its probable condition in the future. However, it may have something to do with company-specific, issuer-specific factors as well, and please appreciate that changes to ratings may also have very sort of tangible consequences. Certain covenants may be triggered if a company's rating deteriorates below a certain level. So, certain clauses in loan agreements or bond agreements may indeed come into play. We talked previously about step-up bonds. These are bonds that may increase their coupon, increase the amount of interest which they pay, and once again, a downgrade below a certain level by one of these rating agencies may be the trigger for that step up to happen. So please do bear that in mind. Okay, changes to credit ratings. This is called, well, this is I guess a reflection of what we call credit migration risk. It's also known as downgrade risk. So basically, if your rating is if your rating is dropping, becoming lower, that's called a downgrade risk. Good. This is the risk of credit quality deteriorating. I.e. basically getting changed to a lower rating. That's the downgrade bit, the migration bit. And also please be aware that ratings are not just looked at by investors or required by investors to make decisions about the creditworthiness of an issuer. They're also a lot of the time mandated by regulators, or certain contracts that you enter in to require you to have a rating in the first place. Okay, as we said, even though there is supposed to be this element of independence, which I seem to be stressing, they are issued on behalf of the issuer. So it's the issuer has to pay for an agency to rate them, to investigate them, analyze them, and provide a rating. So ratings are issued on behalf of the issuer, which definitely introduces an element of conflict of interest here. The way the rating agencies go about this is they base their analysis, so this is based on both, of course, publicly available information, but also potentially non-publicly available data. Information. Now this second bit, non-publicly available, that's not always the case, let's say sometimes. So in order to formulate forward-looking guidance, the agencies may, for example, want to see forecasts prepared by management which are not in the public domain, let's say. What else? Agencies they don't just provide a rating and that's it. They also, on an ongoing basis, monitor the situation. So agencies monitor the ongoing performance, so this is a G, ongoing performance of the issuer once a rating has been granted, once a rating has been issued, and if needed, adjust that rating. Of course, there would be no other point to do that. And another very important point is that they also may provide not just a rating, but also an outlook. May provide either a positive one or a negative one, positive or negative. And this happens when they see that the credit quality of an issuer has changed, either for the better or for the worse, but it's not enough of a change yet to mandate a rating change as such. But they're already indicating that things are moving in a certain direction. That's also very valuable for analysts and for investors. Right. Good. Now, the ratings how the ratings themselves are, what the scale is. I do strongly encourage you to have a look at the curriculum, either in the electronic version or if you've got access to the book, just to get your head around the convention being used here, because you have to have some idea of the way in which these things work. Unfortunately, S&P and Fitch have one, let's say, methodology, whereas Moody's has something different. Kind of, they work on a slightly different scale. I mean, at the end of the day, you just have to have some idea of what's going on. So let's start with the best rating. That's typically the AAA. This is the rating that conveys the highest quality here, and therefore also lowest credit risk. And I mean, the next rating down from that would be a AA plus. Then you would have a single A, then a AA minus. So as you can see, if I've got 3 A's, that's better than 2 A's, but 2A plus, AA plus is better than AA minus. And then, look, a single A comes next, which is still a very good rating, but it's not as good as AA. But single A will be better than triple B. That's kind of the idea. And there's a triple B plus, just a triple B. Then you've got a triple B minus, and you know what comes next. You're going to have double Bs, etc. This is where the different ways of rating differ, because, for example, Moody's will have BAA instead of triple B. But the point is, I think this point is really, really important. On this scale used by S&P, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch, this is an important point, and on the scale used by Moody's, that same point is described as BAA3. Okay, why is it important? Because this is where the so-called investment grades end. So if you are rated somewhere within this spectrum, you'll be described as investment grade, and this is something we already discussed before, didn't we? In an earlier on video. Whereas if you receive a rating that is below this level, that would be described as non-investment grade. Or indeed high yield, which your book likes using to describe issuers below this level. Another, term that we often use here is just simply junk. It could be low grade, it could be speculative, which is what you see a lot as well being used. Now, at the very bottom of this scale, you'll get the D rating. Okay, D as in default. So this is what S&P and Fitch use. However, Moody's is different. As I told you, Moody's uses C. C at Moody's. And the problem is, the Moody's C Doesn't necessarily mean the company already is or the issuer is in default. It may mean that default is just highly likely, but not necessarily in default yet. Well, these little differences exist. I do encourage you to have a look at the actual ratings just to get your head around them and see what's going on there. Don't worry about spending too much time on this. And if you don't have the time, don't bother. This should absolutely be enough. Right. An important consideration that your book kind of makes. As an analyst, you shouldn't really rely on credit agencies, rating agencies, doing the work for you when doing the analysis, and therefore you have to do nothing as a bond investor. That's absolutely not the case. You should perform your own independent analysis and draw your own conclusions from that analysis. Obviously, use what the rating agencies provide as some kind of guidance, but don't rely on it solely. That's the message. And this is going to be especially true for those lower rated issuers, the non-investment grade, the high yield ones, where there is a lot of complexity in really, and a lot of question marks. So, really do your own independent research there to perhaps find underperforming or overperforming, or underpriced, overpriced assets. Now, let's formalize some of the points why rating agencies may not necessarily always produce ratings that are very objectively good. First of all, credit ratings are sometimes described as being sticky. Credit ratings are sticky in the sense that they don't change often enough. They may lag, so kind of move behind what's happening to the market prices. They may lag market pricing of credit risk. And what I mean by this is, if an issuer's situation is either deteriorating or improving, that change to the perceived credit risk is already reflected in prices and in yields, but it doesn't necessarily get reflected in the rating yet. Bond prices and therefore spreads, which are a function of prices, right, and credit spreads. They change all the time. They change continuously if the bonds are being traded continuously, and they typically move faster than actual ratings change. So that's an important point to consider. Bond prices change continuously. Ratings get updated only once in a while. And the point your book also makes here, I'm not going to write this down, I think it's just very obvious, that those investors who choose to only invest or sell, buy or sell, when a rating change actually happens, when they know, oh, this is improving or deteriorating, and they've got confirmation of that from a rating agency publishing a revised rating. Well, those investors may absolutely underperform those investors who don't wait for an official ratings change, but just move ahead based on their own analysis. The other type of investment is kind of encouraged by the CFA curriculum, making your own independent judgment and going forward without waiting for the official confirmation when it becomes absolutely public news. Okay, the other very important point is, just two other points. Some risks, this is coming from directly from your curriculum, some risks are quite difficult to capture in credit ratings. Let's say via credit ratings, and this is once again a difficulty associated with using ratings. Examples of this would be things like litigation risk. The risk that somebody will sue the company and want money from it may be also very hot topic these days, environmental risk. Or things like the likelihood of a big transaction happening, an M&A or a share repurchase. And sometimes you may get split ratings, especially in very complex situations. If you've got a complex business with a complex set of risks, we don't know which way it's going to go. You get split ratings, that is, different agencies provide very divergent ratings, all at different levels, because they view that same situation differently. Why? Because it's complex, and that's absolutely understandable. Now, please also appreciate that ratings may involve what your curriculum refers to as miscalculations, so basically understatements, underestimates, or overestimates, and unforeseen changes, will simply will not be captured in the analysis. So this is a little bit different than things like litigation risk, where you maybe know there is a case going on and it's just difficult to assess. Here you may simply not capture certain things that exist, and simply nobody knows about this. This is unforeseen, this is difficult to predict. So things like COVID, or things like the 2008 credit crunch, although some people would argue that was predictable. You've got a perfectly good company, and then we find out that somebody was committing big-time accounting fraud, and your book does go on about an example out of Germany called Wirecard. So if you want to read about that, please do, but if you don't have time, you don't need it for the exam. So these are some of those very sort of simple points concerning rating agencies and ratings themselves, hopefully all self-explanatory and quite intuitive.